Hello everyone, welcome to today's show. My name is Spencer Walsh. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have a great show and none of it is about Donald Trump. What? That is incredible. So surest way to face marijuana charges in New York. Here's how to do it. Be black or Hispanic. We'll tell you about the groundbreaking New York Times report. That's not groundbreaking because it tells us pretty much everything we already know and is cited from other studies. Oliver North worked with cocaine traffickers to arm terrorists. So it's kind of 1-2 punch of bad people there. And here's a third, Oliver North, because he's not going to be president of the NRA. We'll take a look at him, and we'll take a look at the worst newsletter in politics. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So we'll get a lot of cool stuff for you today. I'm very excited about today's news story. News stories that we got lined up for you today. So we go from serious to moderately serious to just what? Yeah, that's pretty much all I will describe our last story. So, yeah, they sit in courtroom pews, almost all of them black men, waiting their turn before a New York City judge to face a charge that no longer exists in some states, possessing marijuana. They tell of smoking in a housing project hallway or being in the car of a friend who was smoking or lighting up a blackened milled cigar the police mistake for a blunt. There are many ways to be arrested on marijuana charges, but one pattern has remained true through the years of piecemeal policy changes in New York. The primary targets are black and Hispanic people. This has just always been true. So across the city, black people are arrested on a low-level marijuana charges at 3 times the rate of white non-Hispanic people over the past 3 years, the New York Times found. Non-Hispanic people, black people were arrested on low-level marijuana charges at 8 times the rate of non-Hispanic people over the past 3 years. New York Times found Hispanic people were arrested at 5 times the rate of white people. In Manhattan, the gap is even starker. Black people were arrested 15 times the rate of white people at that for that charge in general. So with the crime dropping and the police department under pressure to justify the low level of arrest it makes, the senior police official recently testified to lawmakers that there was a simple reason behind the racial imbalance. More residents in predominantly black and Hispanic neighborhoods were calling to complain about marijuana. So, I mean, that's what the justification was. That was what the seeming unfair imbalance was said. Like, that seemed to be the problem that was going on, and it kind of made a lot of sense. I mean, if there were more police coming, it makes more sense. There would be more calls made. But an analysis by the Times found the fact did not fully explain the racial disparity. Instead, among neighborhoods where people called about marijuana at the same rate, the police almost always made arrests at a higher rate with more black residents, in the area with more black residents. So, yeah, among neighborhoods, people called, for example, the same time. For example, neighborhood A and neighborhood B. Neighborhood A was majority white, neighborhood B was majority black. They all called at the same rate. Pretty much the principle would be they would always go to neighborhood B because neighborhood B was B for black. So, and I mean, maybe, I don't know, the thought process was they had a better chance of success because, black people smoke weed, apparently. Obviously, that is the BS stereotype. But in Brooklyn, officers in the precinct covering Canarsie arrested people on marijuana possession charges at a rate more than 4 times as high in the precinct that includes Greenpoint. Despite residents calling 311, the city's helpline, and 911 to complain about marijuana at the same rate. The Canarsie precinct is 85% black. The Greenpoint precinct is 4% black. So, the marijuana possession charges are 4 times higher in Canarsie as opposed to Greenpoint. So it's really, the difference is quite staggering there. I mean, the examination turned some pretty clear results from the New York Times. So, 4 times as many arrests for marijuana in a precinct that includes Canarsie, which is 85% black, compared to Greenpoint, which is largely white, even though residents call 311 again at the same time. So in Queens, the marijuana arrest rate is 10 times as high as the precinct covering Queens Village, as it is in the precinct that serves Forest Hills. So 10 times higher marijuana arrest rate in Queens Village, much smaller arrest rate in Forest Hills. Both got marijuana complaints at the same rate, but the Queen Hills Village is just over half black, while Forest Hills is a very small portion of black residents. But in Manhattan, officers in the precinct covering a stretch of Western Harlem make marijuana arrests. So it's Manhattan, and then it's Harlem, which is obviously supposed to be a pretty big weed spot. Make marijuana arrests at double the rate of their counterparts in a precinct covering the northern part of the Upper West Side. So, both receive calls at the same rate, but with the Manhattan / Harlem district or precinct, it's double the rate of arrests as opposed to Upper West Side, and both get complaints at the same rate. So Harlem has double the percentage of black residents as the precinct covering Western Harlem. Harlem has double the percentage of black residents that are as one that serves the Upper West Side. So as the one that serves the Upper West Side there. So the Times analysis combined with interviews with defendants facing marijuana charges, lawyers, and police officers paints a picture of an uneven enforcement. In some neighborhoods, officers are expected by their commanders to be assertive on the streets and seize on the smell of marijuana and stop people who are smoking. In others, people smoke in public without a fear of an officer passing by or stopping them. So that's the very uneven imbalance that people are really, through media coverage like this, are really starting to come into, because a lot of people aren't in the same neighborhoods and they don't experience the same reality. Apparently, it's just so apparent and so, it's really quite worrying. So black neighborhoods can often contend with more violent crime, and their police deploy extra police officers there, which can lead to residents being exposed more to the police. More cops in neighborhoods means they're likely to encounter somebody smoking. Columbia law enforcement professor who advised the Times on its marijuana arrest analysis, Jeffrey Fagan, said, but officers are historically assigned to black neighborhoods. More officers are historically assigned to black neighborhoods than would be expected based on crime rates, according to the study by Professor Fagan. And research found there is no good evidence that the marijuana arrests in New York City are associated with reductions in serious crime. So pretty much, officers who catch someone smoking marijuana are legally able to stop and search the person and check for open warrants. Search that person, and they can check them. So some defense lawyers and criminologists say those searches and warrant checks are the real impetus for enforcing marijuana laws in more heavily in some neighborhoods. So that's the some defense lawyer criminologist take. The analysis by the Times shows that at least some quality of life arrests have more to do with the police department strategies than with the residents' call for help, undermining some of the major arguments the police have used to defend mass enforcement of minor offenses in an era of declining serious crime. The analysis examined how marijuana arrests were related to the marijuana complaint rate, race, violent crime levels, the poverty, and home ownership data in each precinct. So they really did everything here. It also considers the borough where an arrest took place to account for different policing practices across the city. The arrests represent cases in which the most serious charge against someone was low-level marijuana possession. So government surveys have shown that black and white people use marijuana at roughly the same rate. Marijuana smoke wafts down streets all over the city, from brownstones in the upper middle-class areas of Manhattan to apartment buildings in working-class neighborhoods in other boroughs. Mayor Bill de Blasio said in 2014 the police would largely give summonses instead of making arrests for carrying public marijuana, and reserves arrests mainly for smoking in public. But since then, the police have arrested 17,500 people for marijuana possessions on the average year, down from about 26,000 in 2014. So there is a little bit of improvement. Overall, the arrests have dropped sharply from their recent peak of more than 50,000 years during Mayor Michael R. Bloomberg's term. What do you know? Yeah. So yeah, not surprising, and it's something that progressives have been trying to tell you throughout the entire time. Michael Bloomberg, they were trying to get him to run for president. No one wants him to run for president. It's so stupid. All right, now we got that out of the way. That's great. Yeah, we know our problems with Michael Bloomberg here. So about 87% of those arrested in recent years have been black or Hispanic, a proportion that has remained roughly the same for decades, according to research led by Harry Levine, a sociology professor at Queens College. What you have is people smoking weed at the same places in any neighborhood in the city. So it's the same places. A special counsel of the criminal defense practices at the Bronx Defenders, who has studied marijuana arrests. It's just those neighborhoods are patrolled very, very differently. The question is why, and the people in these neighborhoods are seen very differently by the police. Responding to the Times analysis, the police department said pockets of violent crime and heavier deployments that result push up marijuana arrest in some neighborhoods. J. Peter Donald, an assistant at the commissioner's office in the public information, the assistant commissioner in the department's public information office, also said people smoke more in public in some neighborhoods than others, driving up arrests. He said 911 and 311 complaints about marijuana had increased in recent years. NYPD police officers enforce the law fairly and evenly, not only where they observe infractions, but also in response to complaints from 911 and 311 calls, tenant associations, community councils, and Build the Block meetings. So, they are getting a lot of input there from people in that neighborhood, but there's still something about this just seems to be quite uneven. Police data do show that neighborhoods with many black and Hispanic residents tend to generate more 911 and 311 calls about marijuana. Criminal justice advocates say that's not because more people are smoking marijuana in those areas. Rather, people in poor neighborhoods call the police because they're less likely to have a responsive landlord, building superintendent, or a co-op board member who can field their complaints. Rory Lankman, a councilman from Queens, who pressed police officials for marijuana data at the February hearing, said the police still arresting thousands of people for smoking in a widespread push for reform. Amid a widespread push for reform, and said the police blame it on the communities themselves because they're the ones calling on us. The city's 77 precincts, led by commanders with their enforcement priorities, show erratic arrest patterns. In Sunset Park, Brooklyn, for example, the police have made more than twice as many marijuana arrests last year as in 2016, despite receiving roughly the same number of annual complaints. How is that happening? And in a precinct covering a section of northwestern Harlem, arrests dropped to 90 last year, more than 700 from almost 700 a year earlier, even though the complaints fell only slightly from one year to the next. So, very, very strange, erratic arrest numbers. There is a problem here, and that is something we need to look into at the point. So, we will look into that as well. But now we turn our attention to the NRA, and they've always been clear about drugs. They are terrifying. Last year, NRA CEO Wayne LaPierre darkly warned that members of drug gangs are, quote, infiltrating law enforcement and even the military. In 2013, LaPierre proclaimed Latin American drug gangs have invaded every city of significant size in the United States and are a key part of the hellish world that awaits us in the future. Charlton Heston was the president of the NRA in the 1990s, and he declared that back then, that regular Americans would soon be besieged by 10,000 drug dealers freed from prison by the Clinton administration. How funny that turned out to be. Great prediction there, Charlton. Jeez. Wow. That's pretty dumb. Who can really be